My stepdad accused me of stealing to get access to the wealth my mom wanted to leave for me, and my whole family believed it, including my father, so I got abandoned by the whole family. But 5 years later the web of lies got caught and family wants to mend ways. 5 years ago, I, 23 male, was accused of theft by my stepdad Chris. And because of that, literally my entire family ostracized me, and they didn't just cut me off. My mom even took away my education fund to give it to that liar, so I had to start working instead. So the backstory is that Chris already didn't like me, and then a couple of days after he got married to my mom, he accused me of stealing his watch collection and selling everything. He planted some evidence here and there as well, like a few of the missing items in my room at my mom's house, then a couple of receipts in my wallet and stuff like that. It was very well thought out and executed, and definitely not a spur-of-the-moment decision. And I know for a fact that he himself had sold his watches just to frame me, but nobody believed me. I tried to explain to my family that I hadn't done anything, that he was lying, but there was just no point. They cut me off, humiliated me completely, and pretty much just ruined my mental health with their accusations. They haven't spoken to me in the past 5 years, but all of a sudden, now that they know the truth, they want to mend their way and want me to give them a second chance. Even my biological father, who had literally raised me for the most part since after the divorce, and my mom, who had become my primary custodial parent, didn't believe me. He had also cut me off back then, and now he wants to talk to me. But I don't want to speak to them. I don't want to interact with any of them right now, and I've been very clear about it. I feel like I'm finally doing well for myself. I have a stable career, and I'm not depressed anymore like I was for the past couple of years, so the last thing that I want is my family back in my life. But my dad has told me that back then, because of all the evidence that was there against me, they had no option but to believe Chris. So I can't hold that against them, and I need to forgive them so we can reconcile as a family. I don't feel the same way about the situation though, so AITA for not wanting to reconcile with my family. Edit. Hey. I'm sorry, guys, but I really don't know how they figured out the truth all of a sudden. I haven't even asked them about it because I know that it's going to require me to actually talk to them so I can get to the bottom of this. And I don't think that I'm in the right space of mind for that right now. I just want to focus on my work and myself, and that's it. I don't want to do anything to do with my family, at least not at the moment. Update 1. Hi. So I reached back out to my dad and told him that my decision was final. I did not want to speak to him right now, nor did I want to speak to anybody else from the family. So all of them need to stop contacting me. So far, they had been texting and calling me. And just because I was a bit confused about whether I was doing the right thing or not, I hadn't blocked them. But now that I was sure that I didn't have to talk to them if I didn't want to, I just went ahead and blocked them. It really feels like a huge headache has gone away because lately I've been feeling really guilty about not wanting to talk to them. I kept thinking about what my dad had said, the fact that given the circumstances of my strained relationship with Chris combined with the so-called evidence that they had found, it felt like he must have been telling the truth. And I thought about things from their point of view. And I don't know why, but I started to think that maybe if I had been in their place, I wouldn't have believed myself either. But then they knew me as a person. They had literally raised me and known me from when I was a child. So as my family, they should have believed me. They should have known better. I was torn between these two perspectives, but at the end of the day, I'll do what I want to do. If I don't want to speak with them right now, I'm not obliged to do so just because they feel bad about whatever happened in the past. They had 5 years to figure out stuff for themselves, but they didn't. They didn't even try, and even now they wouldn't have found out about the truth had my mother not stumbled upon it completely by accident. So, yes, I finally did end up asking my dad how they found out the truth before I blocked him because I was really curious. He told me that a couple of days before they all reached out to me, my mom had been using Chris's laptop for some work since hers wasn't working and she had to give it up for repairs. While working, she accidentally opened his email instead of hers. But before switching accounts, she noticed that he had a new email talking about some unsold watches. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to check that email. And unfortunately for Chris, it was an email from the guy that he had actually sold all his watches to. Apparently, there was this last item, a luxury watch, that he had purchased from Chris, but since it was a rare piece, he hadn't had the heart to dismantle it or sell it. The craftsmanship on that watch was excellent. But now 5 years had passed, and neither had he sold the watch nor had he done anything with it. He was retiring, so he was going to be closing shop, and he wanted to know if Chris wanted to buy that watch back. He had even attached a picture of that watch, and my mom recognized it because, of course, Chris had made such a hue and cry about all the watches that apparently I had stolen and sold, that my family was bound to remember every single one of them. Then it was not that difficult for my mom to put two and two together, and then she confronted Chris. He tried to deny everything at first, but then he started crying about how I had always hated him. And he knew that if I had continued to be a part of their life, I would have definitely tried to ruin their marriage at some point. He told my mom that he recognized me for what I really was. I was a vampire for my mom's money, and he didn't want me to ruin her life, so he decided to drive me away. He tried to make it sound like it was something that he had done for my mom's own good, But now that the truth was out, there was no fooling her anymore. She kicked him out of the house because even if we humored whatever he had said in his defense, that he thought I was constantly trying to get my mom to spend money on me, it still didn't make sense for him to accept my education fund. Also, it was a pretty stupid defense to try and make me look like a gold digger when I'm literally my mom's only son. I didn't even ask her for more money than she already paid for in child support. The only thing that I had ever really expected from my mom was for her to cover my college tuition because I planned on going to college out of state, and I knew that it was going to be expensive. I didn't want to work at the same time as going to college because it would get too hectic and stressful, and the degree that I was aiming for was quite hard anyway. I knew that my mom made enough money, so it would not be a big deal for her. And I didn't want to rely on my dad because at the time, he was planning on starting his own business. I don't understand how any of this was going to make me look like a gold digger, especially when the person who was accusing me of being a gold digger was actually the biggest gold digger himself. Chris literally quit his job a week after he got engaged to my mom. Then he framed me for stealing all his watches and selling them even though I know for a fact that he himself had done it. And he already had the money from that, which must have been quite a lot because from what I know, it had all been his dad's collection, and not only was it rare, but it was also expensive. Then after the whole fiasco with me, I know for a fact that he accepted my education fund money from my mom, which she decided to use to apologize for my behavior. What he eventually ended up doing with all that money, I don't know, but the fact of the matter is that if you're talking about who is a gold digger, and in the truest sense of the word, I don't think I can beat Chris. Anyway, his defense made no sense, and my mom was able to see through it. So she kicked him out of the house. And from what I have been told by my dad, he's staying with his mom right now and begging my mom to take him back every day, but she has already filed for a divorce. My problem is that they had 5 years to look into this, but they believed Chris blindly. Even my own dad, who knew exactly what kind of problems I had with Chris, didn't take my side when it was time. He, of all people, should have known that I was not a thief. So all these apologies really don't mean anything to me anymore. The bottom line is that they gave away my college fund to a liar, and even now, they wouldn't have found out about the truth if my mom hadn't accidentally opened his emails. They were so trusting of him that they didn't even think this was worth looking into or investigating at a deeper level. They just took his word for it and kicked me out of the family. After that, they never even bothered to check up on me. I had to look out for myself, and I was completely on my own. And let me just tell you, even though 18 is considered adulthood, I was inexperienced and young and broke. So I felt just as lost as I would have if I had been any younger. It was one of the most difficult times for me, and I don't think I would have survived by myself had it not been for my friends. They couldn't afford to pay for me to go to college even though I did get into my top choice because it would be very expensive, and their parents were already funding their education. I didn't want to rely on them like that or burden them by asking them to co-sign student loans for me either, especially when I was already sleeping on their couches. But, thankfully, one of my friends had already decided to take a gap year and work for her mom. So she got me in as well, and I started earning. Soon enough, I had saved up enough money to rent an apartment and start living on my own. Since then, I have continued to work really hard and diligently, and I'm even in talks for yet another promotion in a couple of months. I accomplished all of this on my own without any help or moral support from my family. So I don't think I owe it to them to talk to them just because they have finally realized that they were wrong. If they had just believed me back then, I wouldn't even have been in this position right now. I probably would have been doing way better. I would have been able to go to the college of my choice and work in companies of my choice. I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for what I have right now, but knowing that this is not my full potential, that just hurts. I don't think that I'll ever be able to bring myself to forgive them for what they did, and I don't think I have to forgive them either. Just because they're sorry now doesn't mean that I'm obliged to let everything go all of a sudden. Now, if at any point in time I do feel like I want to forgive them, then I might. If I don't, then I won't, and I refuse to feel bad for it either. My dad has no right to make me feel guilty for not wanting to reconcile with them, especially when he himself didn't feel guilty for cutting me off so abruptly. He knew that I didn't get along with Chris. He knew that Chris had every reason to frame me, but even then, he chose to believe that man over me. I'm not even kidding. For years after getting kicked out, I kept trying to figure out why exactly these people believed him over me, especially when I had never lied in my life. All my life, I had always tried to be a good kid and a good son to my parents, and yet that hadn't been enough. But when it came down to it, they believed some random loser man who just happened to be married to my mom over me. And, yes, even if I think about the fact that there was some evidence against me that Chris had very cleverly arranged, they still didn't have enough reason to believe him. After all, the proof that he had arranged it would have been very easy for him to frame me, especially when I was not even aware of what he was trying to do behind my back, and I was not on alert. If I'm gonna be using language, all the evidence was circumstantial, and if Chris had been so sure of the fact that I had stolen and sold everything, then he should have gone to the cops. I had suggested it a couple of times myself back when everything was happening, but it was my family who had stopped that from taking place, probably because they were too worried about the family reputation just in case I did turn out to be a thief. That's how low their confidence in me actually was. And the more that I think about this situation, the angrier I feel. So whatever. I think they messed up, and now they're just gonna have to live with it. Update 2. Hey. So I blocked my family a couple of days ago. For the record, they had already been blocked for a really long time. They had just managed to find out my new contact info from other people. I don't know who exactly gave it out. I'm guessing some cousins or maybe friends, but regardless of the situation, they decided to contact me again. And this time, they wrote me an email collectively saying that they were all really sorry for their behavior for the past 5 years and that they should have believed me instead of kicking me out like that. They told me that they really wanted to meet me and set things right again. And even if we don't end up reconciling immediately, they think it's worth it to at least give it a chance. I don't know what to say to them, so I just ignored that email. I have spoken to a couple of my close friends about this, and they think that I don't have to speak to them if I don't want to, just like everyone else, especially given that it's taking me a really long time to get over whatever has happened. Like I had mentioned in my last update, I had been depressed for a very long time, and now I'm finally doing better after a lot of therapy and working on myself. I don't want to ruin all that hard work, so I really want to stay away from them. But at the same time, I really also want to give them a piece of my mind because it's been 5 years, and I feel tempted to let them know exactly how I feel about them. I can still deal with the fact that my mom and my maternal grandparents are delusional enough to believe that they still have a chance, but it's my dad that I'm really upset about. Even back when everything was going wrong, I had expected him to be in my corner, but he had also turned his back on me. So more than anybody else, I want to let him know that he really let me down. He should have stood up for me. I really want to tell him that, but then that's going to mean that I have to talk to them. In my past few interactions with them recently, I have been polite enough, but now they're beginning to get on my nerves. And I feel like if they continue bothering me like this, I'm gonna snap eventually. And I really don't want to do that. It's taking me a really long time to get to where I am today, be it emotionally or financially. And I don't want them to ruin it for me, but I think that if they send another email after this, then I might definitely snap at them now. Also, now that that's out of the way, I feel like I really should mention why I didn't get along with Chris. A lot of people have been asking me how our relationship actually began and how did it ever even come to a point like that. So I feel like I have to say that even though our relationship had never been good in the first place, I never expected him to do something like that because that's actually insane. Anyway, when my mom started dating him, I already didn't like him much because I found him to be very pretentious. And I don't know, his vibes were just very weird. From the beginning, I just tried to avoid him and he would do the same for me, so it's not like we had much of a relationship in the beginning. But then, slowly, as his relationship with my mom got serious, he started trying to control me, and I wouldn't listen to him because I really didn't feel like I had to. He would manipulate my mom into trying to get me to follow his ways, and they were little things, but it still felt pretty bad because he was trying to control the way that I dressed, the things that I ate, and even the times when I went out. At one point, it got too much for me, so I told him that I knew what he was trying to do. I knew that he was trying to act like he was my father, but at the end of the day, the fact remains that he's really not my father. I actually have a dad. I don't need him to be a second one, so I would really appreciate it if he stopped interfering in my life. He could marry my mom if he wanted to. I didn't have a problem with that. But I don't have to treat him the same way that I treat my dad, and I really don't have to be obedient to him. I didn't fight with him or anything, just put him in his place, and since then he started disliking me. He never told my mom about it, but I guess he was just gearing up for this one big move after his marriage, and he was successful in fooling my family. Now that I think back on it, I'm pretty sure that there was something very wrong with him because I can't imagine a grown man having such full-blown beef with a teenager and then actually doing something so horrible to them just to get back at them for putting them in their place. Anyway, that's the kind of person that my family chose to believe over me, and it's not like I didn't bring this up with them in my defense. I did try to tell them that he had it in for me right from the very first instance and that he was probably trying to frame me, but they didn't believe me. They thought that I was crazy and I was just trying to shift the blame onto him because I was too ashamed of myself. Actually, I'm too ashamed of my family because I have to be associated with idiots. Now I really hope they don't contact me anymore and just take the hint. Update 3. So unfortunately, my dad decided to show up at my house today. He told me that one of my cousins told him the address, which I think is really out of line because he was a person I actually trusted in the past 5 years, and he knew that I didn't want my dad to show up. So this was a huge breach of my privacy, but I'll deal with that later. Right now, I feel like I just have to talk about what went down with my dad. When he showed up a couple of hours ago in the evening, I was very tired from a long day at work, so I told him to go away because I really didn't want to talk to him, but he stood his ground and he told me that he was not going anywhere until he spoke to me because 5 years had already passed since he had made that huge mistake and he was not making another one by leaving right now because he had been trying to talk to me for a long time now and it was about time I heard him out. I didn't want to create drama, so I just let him in because I thought I could get it over with. When he was inside, he hugged me. He started crying and told me that he was really sorry about everything he had done. He said that he had just been very taken aback by everything that Chris had accused me of, and because of all the evidence, he had actually started to believe that maybe Chris was telling the truth. Then he told me that I had been kicked out of the family. He had thought about getting in touch with me several times, but then he thought that I needed to learn my lesson and start being disciplined. Only now, after he had found out the truth, did he realize that he had made a huge mistake, and he just wanted to make up for it because I was his only son. He didn't think he could afford to lose me, and he said that he knew that deep down I felt the same way about him, that I didn't want to lose him either. So I told him that in the beginning maybe I did feel the same way, that I didn't want to lose my dad, but in the past 5 years, I've learned to live without my family, and now it really makes no difference to me anymore. Then he started crying, telling me that he knew I was only saying this out of anger and I had every right to be angry because, after all, he had really let me down, but then he knew that it was not the truth. He continued to hug me and kept crying, but I told him that now that I had given him an opportunity to talk to me, I really needed him to leave because I wanted to relax after work. Then he started getting upset. He told me that it had taken a lot of convincing for my cousin to give out my contact info and my address, and he knew that I was upset with him, but there was still no reason to be so rude to him. At that point, I finally just lost it, and I told him that he and his ex-wife had pretty much ruined my entire life. If he had just stood by my side and told my mom that I was telling the truth, then there might have been a proper investigation into the whole thing, and they would have found out that Chris had been lying all along. That way, I would have been able to go to college and I would have been able to have the life that I wanted for myself without having to struggle so much. So just because of his decision not to believe me, my entire life had been turned upside down. Whether he liked it or not, I did not want to talk to him anymore, at least not at the moment. And if I did want to reconcile with them at any point, I would come to them myself, but for now, he would just have to deal with the fact that I didn't want to see him and just get out of my house. I was very upset, so I yelled at him, and he seemed shocked, but then he recovered and told me that he could understand that I was very upset and he would come back later, but I had really hurt him. I couldn't care less about that though. I just told him that I wanted him to leave and eventually he did go away. To be very honest, at this point, their apologies don't really mean anything to me. Whatever damage had to be done, it's already been done, and them saying sorry is not going to take it back. I just want to move on with my life. I already have moved on with my life halfway. What I needed was some closure, and I think that I've received that as well. So right now, I just really want to be done with this whole thing, and I hope that he doesn't come back anytime soon because I feel like I've already had a lot of stress and anxiety to deal with the past couple of days. I don't need any more of that. Update 4. Hi. So it's been 3 weeks since my last update, and since then my family hasn't gotten in touch with me except for sending me an email around last week. Yet again, it was a collective email from my dad and my maternal grandparents telling me that they were really sorry about everything that had happened, and they would continue to be sorry for the rest of their lives if that's what it takes for me to forgive them. They had heard about my interaction with my dad, and they know that I don't want to right now, so they will stay away from me. But they really hope, at some point in time, I'll be able to forgive them, and I'll try to reconcile with them myself. They also told me that my mom, even though she didn't show herself, is more apologetic than anybody else because she thinks that all of this could have been avoided if she had just trusted me instead of her husband. She also apologized to me for screwing up my chances at college and told me that she was willing to write me a check so that at least now I can go to college. But I don't feel like taking money from her right now, so I've decided to pass up on that, at least for now. In the future, I might forgive them, but I might not. I don't really know because I haven't made up my mind since this is a very complicated situation. However, for now, I'm very content with my life as it is, so I don't want to bring about any new changes.